Welcome all. My name is Britt Gage. I'm the founder of All Trades. Today is the first of our Of All Trades summer school series, a series of webinars and events that we decided to put on after operating as a company for 5 years, realizing we do things differently and we think about how to grow and build teams in a unique way that's really helping people, especially now in this age of AI. So we have been learning by doing ourselves, and we're excited to start to teach that and share the insights that we have experienced over this time building Of All Trades into what we're doing today. So today is the first of our oAT summer series, and we are kicking off with how our operators are actually using AI. I'm super excited that we have three incredible operators, chief operators, as part of oAT that are joining us today. I will let all of you introduce yourselves if you'd like, and then I will share a little bit about what we'll be talking about today, and we'll kick it off from there. Stephen, since you're off mute, would you like to introduce yourself and say hi?
Yeah, I'm Steven, and I've been with oAT now for about 3 years, and I've worked with all different kinds of organizations from small nonprofits to global enterprises, and have really kind of made this sort of AI transition as it's been happening from like late 2023 until today. And so I feel like I'm kind of growing up operationally with AI. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Amazing. Joshua, do you want to intro yourself too?
Yeah, so I'm Joshua, one of the chief operators and head of growth here at oAT. Over the last few years, I've worked with several startups primarily, helping them on the go-to-market side, understanding how to take things from zero to one in terms of sales and marketing. Prior to that, I was a founder myself as well, with an AI startup pre-ChatGPT. So saw things happening very quickly as we built the company, and and yeah, also always learning, so always new, but enjoying using AI and using it to solve the go-to-market problem or trying to.
Amazing. Kelsey, would you like to intro yourself to close us?
Sure, sure. Hi, I'm Kelsey. I chief operator of alignment, which is a new role at oAT, but I prior to this kind of swim lane of aligning data and people, I would say mostly I'm a geek about systems and tools. And I've worked with startups, nonprofits, small businesses, enterprise, and across the board, it really has been what are we trying to do and how can we solve it? And before AI, we had to rely on what was existing in the market in terms of SaaS products or what was available in the Google Suite. A new Google Sheet tool would be like, oh my God, cool, we can do this thing. But now with AI, the sky's the limit. So it's really transformed the way that we can do things as generalists. And I'm loving catching the wave and seeing what our organizations are able to do now and our generalists as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, we as a company are operators. And why I'm really excited for us to have this conversation and facilitate it from the operator lens is right now, as people are being introduced to this technology, the solutions that many businesses are using to think about, implement, teach this technology are engineering resources or consulting resources. You might have a very adept, specialized AI engineer who knows a lot about this technology that can come into your organization and build a bunch of stuff and then leave. That approach we've seen can be a little disconnected from how some teams are operating. The other approach that some businesses are using are relying on consultants and strategists, people who have a lot of the technological understanding and prowess, but aren't necessarily helping teams move through the changes that they need to be able to move through to actually operate and use these tools effectively or actually bring them into their organization. And so what's been really exciting is the work we've always done at Of All Trades is being embedded partners, being operators on early stage startup teams, at growing organizations, in small businesses, at the local dentist down the street, just being part of the team and helping people really figure out the right how to connect to the what and the why. And so to have 3 different operators in the room today talking about their experiences from the different lenses of the size of companies that they have worked with, and be able to see the things that are similar in how people are using AI as operators and how things might be different. And hopefully the takeaway of this conversation that you have today is comes from all of these different insights. As I sort of mentioned, this is the beginning of our discussion around this. This is the kickoff of our oAT summer school. So we have a few other sessions that are upcoming, really about unlearning the things that we knew about how to operate that are coming over the next few weeks. So if you are interested, hopefully you can come today, learn, and then keep learning with us over the summer. So today, as we dig in, obviously you just had an opportunity to meet the team. We're going to give each of the operators here an opportunity to talk a little bit about what it means to operate using AI from the lenses of startups, growing organizations, small businesses, all the way up to enterprise. Then we'll facilitate some questions across all 3 operators to see kind of what those similarities and differences are. And then we'll open up space at the end for all of our wonderful attendees if you have questions. Joshua, I will allow you to kick us off.
Hey guys, so talking about startups and how they're using AI. So just to kind of set the frame a little bit, startup founders particularly work with limited resources. They always have an uncertain business model, of course, until it is working, until they find one that they want to stick with. And often it's failure by default, especially in the case of go-to-market where they're trying to get awareness out into the market that they're targeting, and trying a lot of different things to see how they do that. So AI can help startups reach milestones quickly when it comes primarily to internal activities. So we need to, let's say, send 100 emails, or we need to do this particular thing, something they have control over. But ultimately, it can't make it a success, especially when it comes to understanding the fundamentals of their business model, getting their first revenue, because that's still on the founders. And often one of the advantages of founders and startups in the early days is that they have or at least when it comes to sales, for example, where they're able to differentiate is their ability to have, relationships with their first clients, and they're able to give a lot of customer service to that. And AI can help facilitate that, but ultimately, it's on the founders to actually do that. And there's only so much you can outsource relationship building. That'll carry on. Startups are early adopters of AI by definition. One of the most interesting uses where they are able to use it effectively is making sure that the whole team is on one aligned message. So especially in the early days when a company is, still trying to understand their value proposition, when they're still trying to understand who they're going out for. What I've seen some of the founders we work with do is create a shared cloud system where there is a centralized way of ensuring that the messaging is the same across all people using Claude. So they're able to, if anyone wants to create an email, if anyone wants to create content, it's the value proposition and the messaging that it comes from is set centrally by someone, often the founder, so that they can change it as the business needs evolve, and so that there's no one is lost in the message that they're getting out there. So it really allows for easy alignment across the whole team. And that can show up in, content, email, anywhere the company's mission has to reach someone externally. And it's something that has really allowed founders to, rather than having to communicate individually to everyone or, reiterate over and over again a change in messaging approach or value prop, they're able to just set it so that all the team members can move really quickly. And that's very, what I just said. They just update that, and they're able to build pieces of content. And also people are able to build new pieces of content and run really quickly with experiments around content that they want to build, still taking in that central messaging into Claude. Another one we've seen is just setting out the foundations for go-to-market or an outreach strategy. So being able to use several tools and Claude itself to actually understand, take that messaging, create emails based off ICPs, and then connect different tools, whether that's CRM, whether that's a data tool like Apollo or Clay or anything like that, to automatically build out outreach processes and focus the team's efforts there, so that there's very minimal supervising of those AI agents to go to market and the outreach forward. And that's the same pattern for blogs and recurring docs. One thing that's great about the use of AI within startups is that you can start to understand those patterns and then go back to that original documentation, back to that original agent, adjust it so that at some point the touch points for the actual team become vulnerable.
Yeah, and I would say I've seen this firsthand in the work that we've done too, because we are very meta, a startup helping startups, that if the purpose of a startup is to learn whether you are an actual business and you have a business model that scales, then the more you can iterate and the more that you can learn, the more opportunity you have to exist with the limited resources that you do. And I think what's been really exciting is being able to use AI to test, to really accelerate the testing motion, to learn more quickly than we would have been able to before by manually doing some of these tests. Would you agree, Joshua?
Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
And another really interesting place is building instead of buying. So I've seen probably in this last few weeks, or the last week alone, a lot of people talking about HubSpot and just trying to get out of it, full stop, because I think it's become completely redundant when it comes to using it as a CRM nowadays. It's very expensive. So, initially, even when I started my own company, we had HubSpot in the early days because it's just what we thought that's what we had to have. That's what we thought we had to use. But now, with every single buying decision on software, founders are thinking, hey, would it actually be that big a lift to build it ourselves? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. That's constantly coming up. And, within a day, the founder themselves can build out a decent CRM that will at least allow those founders to get to the next stage of growth. So that's something that I've seen using a lot. And also another really interesting area, which I've started to see, but I've not seen anyone master at this point, is in the same way that we used to have gated content. And what I've started to see is founders or startups as a go-to-market tool using potentially like gated applications or gated software. So actually delivering value to their ICP in an adjacent space, building out some kind of software or small tool for them, and then gating that so that they can bring them into their sales flow and nurturing flows as well.
Very cool. Amazing. Anything else just overall that you've seen, small insights from the startup ecosystem before we pass the proverbial mic to Kelsey on small businesses?
Yeah, I think in general it's so AI in the use of in the context of using it for startups, and I focus on GTM, so maybe this is an over focus on go to market, but I think it is also the biggest problem for startups, and that's why I think it's most relevant. Is one of the most interesting kind of observations is that a lot of people are using AI for that prospecting side of things and bringing people in, making them aware. And what I would say is that it's very useful from the perspective of making these processes faster and everything else. But you will see a lot of people on Twitter, threads, etc., talk about completely outsourcing that side of things to AI. And from what I've seen so far, it's as much as they will say that it works. When you're in the early stages of a business and you don't know and the ability for you to sell reflects back on your business model and product and everything else, I still think there is value in using AI to help you create those processes and systems and do it quicker. But ultimately, it's really important not to drop the ball on the human element of looking at that, especially in the early days. As you find something that works, AI is perfect for scaling that, really going for growth in that sense. But I think it's really, really important to just be mindful not to completely outsource all of the prospecting and early sales learning to AI. In that sense, not because it can't do it, but because as a founder, as an early stage team, you're the only person that can ultimately.
Yeah, that human in the loop piece is so important. I think we've seen across teams, even outside of go-to-market, really adept startup founders who know this technology well are just building things, and then they've realized that, oh, you're building a company outside of the product piece, and you have to manage that just like everything else that you manage.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful because with AI, you can build more and more, but are you building things in the right direction ultimately? And that's the question you've always got to ask yourself, I think.
Stephen, did you have something to interject?
Yeah, well, it's just something that's kind of popping to mind as you're saying this, and I haven't really thought about, especially like specifically for the go-to-market stuff, but like one thing that AI can really do effectively is like it can separate you from the artifact or from the document or from the code, like whatever you're using AI for. And I think in the case of like go-to-market and your customers, like your potential customers, like what I hear you saying, Josh, was like building that connection like manually and like making sure that you're really connected like to your actual user base or like your ICP or whatever that is, like that's valuable on like all kinds of levels. But I think just fundamentally like on this kind of like human spiritual level, like you really want to identify with these people, right? Because you're really trying to build something for them, and you actually, even if you could abstract yourself away from that, like you don't want to, right? Because it's really important for your business. So anyways, I'm just hearing something there in your words that just resonates on a deep level, I think, around go to market. This is,
Yeah,
interesting
100%.
to me.
Yeah, because it's the subtleties. I mean, if you were to give a concrete example, if you have replies of 1,000 sales emails from that, and you ask artificial intelligence to go through that and choose the ones that are positive versus, and you can get it to do sentiment analysis and all of that and try to understand. But there are subtleties around some of that language that might feed back into other aspects of the business, whether that's the product, whether that's the business model, and they're the things that will ultimately allow you to slowly carve out the stone to get you to success. And AI can take you a large part of the way there, but yeah, that is essentially what I'm saying is you still want to be connected to some of that because it's going to help you make those sorts of changes in the business that will help you get there.
Thanks, Josh. Oh, I went backwards. Stephen, do you want to pick up the thread on enterprise?
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have to switch to the screen where you're actually sharing the slides. I'm like super ADD, I think, because like whenever we're in meetings with slides, I'm like, let me just, especially on Zoom, I'm like, let me just make sure that I'm looking at the people. Yeah, so look, I think one of the things that I've been thinking about around all of this is like how much emotional like change and challenge is involved in shifting our ways of work from you know more manual ways to like working with agents a lot more. And we've done this work for nonprofits, we've done it for startups, small businesses, as Kelsey will talk about later. And in 2026 we're doing it for the very first time for a global enterprise, recently merged organization, over $1 billion in annual revenue. And across like many different product and engineering teams, so our role in all of this is that we're specifically focused on product leaders, directors of product management, VPs, and then individual contributors. And we're sort of running these trainings over the course of like different cohorts. And in any given cohort, there's about 15 to 20 people. And so there's like focused content time, there's like drill down time where we're actually in like working sessions, like truly like pairing with people one-on-one to help them to get set up with these different AI tools, these different agentic tools like Claude Code, specifically Claude Code and Cursor agents. And it's just been really interesting, I think, to see again the emotional waves that people go through. And I had one person tell me in the very first week of working with these tools, and this is like a very technical person, they're a technical product manager, they've been working in tech for a very long time, but this is a new way of work. And they were telling me, they were like, the first day I was trying to get set up, I literally could have broken down crying. And we just sort of like paused the conversation there because I think there is an emotional toll that comes with working in this new way. And there's also this like what I call this like setup tax, which is associated with that. And And it kind of goes hand in glove, I think, with the emotional tool, because you're working in a new way and you're having to work with tools in a new way. And these tools, they don't really feel like tools or like the traditional sort of tech tools that we're used to working with. I think most people are like, yeah, they're like experienced working in like HubSpot or Atlassian. They understand how to like set up sprint cycles and things like that. But these tools are different because they actually have a kind of human quality. And we'll tell people like, don't, maybe it's not the most beneficial thing to like anthropomorphize these different agentic tools, but I think in some way that's exactly what's happening. The moment that you start working with agents, and I tell people this all the time, you're, regardless of where you sit in the org chart, up or down, doesn't matter. The moment that you start working with agents, you automatically have a team and you're responsible for that team and you're responsible for setting that team up for success. And so this is what we're talking about with the set of tasks. And I think you maybe can go to the next slide, Britt. But like there's a couple of different places that I've seen this tax sort of appear. One is just truly in the technical setup itself. Like if you're working with out of the box tools like Claude, for example, and you've got the desktop app set up on your computer, you've probably noticed that if you're working with Cowork or if you're working with Claude Code, and if you don't know what these are, you can Google them. You can reach out to us. We'll tell you. We'd love to tell you more about these tools and how you can use them. But like if you're using these tools out of the box, a lot of times they'll have really quick like sort of one-click connections between like Claude the agent, like Claude Cowork or Claude Code, and like your Microsoft 365 instance or your HubSpot instance or your Atlassian instance. Some of those are really well defined and they're very clear. Not all of them are though. And so in working with teams and individuals, a lot of times what we have to find, there are always these edge cases where you actually have to help them install like a local MCP server. We have to help them like go to like there's like this happened to us recently where we're trying to get connected with Salesforce with a specific team. And we didn't have a click one step connection. At least our organization didn't have that in working with the application. And so we had to go find the repository. We had to install that locally. The person had to go to their Salesforce account. They had to create a personal access token, and they didn't even know what a personal access token was. They had to figure out where they were going to store that. And then in doing this work together, they had put it into a chat interface and it actually got sent to Claude servers. And we had to like stop there and be like, well, that's actually not the way to store a personal access token. So let's go back and revoke that token. Let's go back and back to Claude and try to find the exact place to put it, the safest place to put it. All of these things were completely foreign and completely new to this person. That comes with an emotional cost. It comes with a cost also that's associated with just actual time. And so I think that with our organization, as we were rolling these things out, I don't know that we properly scoped that as a large organization. It was just something that they wanted to do. They wanted to roll out. We have 4 weeks of training, and then people are like off to the races with their agents, right? Well, that's not exactly the way that it works. And there's always going to be sort of these edge cases and these sort of jagged ways of growth. We can shoot to the next slide too. I think the other thing that we're thinking about is like building the product. Oh, sorry. Building for me versus building for we. I'm using this. This is like my new go-to line across the organization. It's like building for me versus building for we. I think working with agents, working with AI fundamentally has a kind of egoist focus first. Like we learn how to build things that help us save time first. That is, you'll learn that sooner rather than later, I think, in working with these tools. Where I see a lot of people stumbling and a lot of teams and a lot of organizations stumbling is learning how to build for the greater whole, like for the greater team, for the greater organization. When you start to build in that way, it actually requires you to ask a whole different set of questions because you have to start thinking about other people who are going to onboard to this Salesforce instance. Like you have to start thinking about, well, it's not enough for me just to get connected. I have to think about like an onboarding resource that might be used for the other people on my team who are also connected to Salesforce. If I'm building a skill that's saving me time, for example, like one product manager that I was working with recently, building a skill for release notes and just making that process much faster and much more efficient. Well, it's connected to all of his different instances. And he's asking me the question of like, well, should I be spending time thinking about how I can build this skill in a way that actually guides the user who's installing it for the first time, how to make the setup, how to make the connections? Should there be a user guide associated with this skill? Like these are all incredible questions that he's asking because he's trying to think not just for himself, but for everyone else. Um, yeah, I don't know if you have any questions about that, Britt or Joshua. I know this is coming up for Kelsey as well.
Yeah, I'm over here like, yes, yes.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
just one thing I want to like add to what you're saying is I'm having there's like a meta what I'm working on right now is how do you build the onboarding skill without the person being onboarded yet? So if they need to access Claude, if they're using Claude to run skills and I want them to use an onboarding skill to onboard themselves to Claude, where does that skill live? Right. And
yeah,
like trying to figure that out and build that out in a really intuitive way. And there's like a creative fun to it. Right. I mean, that part of my brain gets really excited and I love championing those moments, but that's what I'm over here nodding about is a
yeah,
lot of not building in isolation and being like, okay, now it's time to share this. Oh, wait, it's time to share this. Now I actually want to go back and rebuild it a little bit differently.
yeah.
Well,
And Kelsey and I've had like so many conversations about like repository first organizations and like repository, like if you don't know what a repository is, it's basically it's been used mostly by engineers in the past to store code. Now everyone's using repositories to store everything from documents, flowcharts, slide decks, code, and it all sort of lives in the same place. There's also this like desktop application where you can launch plugins. But I know that Kelsey and I've had these conversations about like, man, just getting people onboarded to a repository experience is itself super challenging. One of the ways that we're experimenting with this as a kind of new training resource is you can actually encode certain documentation within a specific repository and actually build a very simple user interface on top of that. And that maybe becomes the first thing that a user might see if they don't have any background or don't have any experience with it, an actual sort of like GitHub, or ADO or like Bitbucket sort of repository environment. And so all of these different ways that we're trying to learn, we're trying to think about how we onboard and how we engage people differently with AI really just comes down to humans helping humans and really trying to understand like, regardless of where you are in this experience, we're trying to build for the person like a least common denominator when it comes to like experience. How do we build for the least of these and then move up through that organization? Because if we're building for the least of these in this way, even the people who are far more advanced are learning a really incredibly important skill with the world of AI, which is how do we build for weight for
yeah.
all of us?
And I will say, just to anchor us back to like you doing this work, because you've also worked with super small startups. You've done this with small businesses, but like what you're contributing is around large organizations that are a we, but you're working with the me. And so there's like, it sounds like definitely a complexity around that. I think of AI as a tool just like when, and obviously it's different because it's remarkably, revelatory. But think of the days of Notion where everybody was
Hmm.
like, wait a minute. And now we can put everything in Notion and it's one shared place and it's documents and it's Excel and it's charts and all of these things. And then everybody rushes there. But it's basic business best practices in terms of how we communicate, how we organize, how we connect, how we share, how we move things forward. That seems just like really important in thinking about outside of just the technology.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the difference between like these enterprises is like it's just a matter of scale at the end of the day, but like it's all like individuals to teams to orgs to business units to the greater organization. But um yeah.
Literally. Last one for you on the enterprise side, and then we'll shift over to costs.
Yeah, I just think like an HR leader. Think like the best HR person you've ever worked with at any organization. Like as you start to work with agents, like they are kind of like little people and you kind of have to build for them in a way that makes sense. As much sense as it would make for a human, and then to think about your humans as well, who are going to always be in the loop in the midst of all this as we grow and as we scale. Yeah, we've got like put the tax in the books. I mean, it's hard to know sometimes exactly like what this tax will be. I think because most of these organizations no matter how sophisticated, don't always have good baselines for how long things are taking them now. But trying to think through like, okay, if you're going to roll these agents out, like what are all of the relevant like MCP servers that they're going to have? Are there clear connections that are already built into the applications? If they're not, like where are those server repositories? How do people access tokens, et cetera? And then number three, absolutely like pair with people through this. This is a massive change that they're going through. And then don't discount like, that spiritual quality of just trying to encourage and affirm people along the way, because it's the most important, it's the most human thing that we do, and it will have the most impact.
Amazing. Thanks, Stephen. Before I pass it to Kelsey to share about your small business experience, I see some attendees are putting questions in the Q&A section. Please do keep putting questions in there. We have a section at the end where we'll go through these and invite more. So if things do come up for you so you don't miss them, please put them in there, and then we will be sure to answer them as we get closer to the end. Kelsey, over to you.
Yes, so I kind of feel excited that I get to be this sweet spot between what Joshua has been explaining and Stephen, only because as far as it goes with small businesses, there isn't a lot of orchestration required. And these are also small businesses tend to be really, they're clear on what they're doing. They're customer obsessed, and they actually enjoy what they're doing most of the time as a small business. Like they're the little ones that could, and they keep going, and they're full of enthusiasm and probably customer obsessed, and really just want to make their lives easier of running the business that they already love. And so the advantage that I'm seeing with these small businesses are with the leaders that actually adopt it from the top, even though it's a small organization, because they have this longevity and creative advantage that's going to keep them afloat as a small business in industries and a market and a world that's going to more and more ask for more. What I'm hearing, like what I'm putting here, is like responsibility, the ability to respond to their customer, to the market, to the need in the moment. And because they're so small, as small businesses, they can actually make those changes in a really agile way. They don't have to get, they're not $1 billion enterprise. They don't have to get everybody on board on Salesforce before they make that change. And then on the startup side, they really do know their customers. So they're I was laughing, Joshua, as you were talking of like, not, sometimes with the small businesses, I feel like they could lean into AI a little bit more, actually, because they are so customer obsessed. They're like arguing with the agent every day. Like they're trying to use AI to write their emails, but they're so customer obsessed that they're reading everything and editing it anyways. So helping them learn how to train the agent so that the email actually sounds more like they want it to, instead of just fighting with their agent every day and being like, it's not good enough, because they really care about their business. So that's what I'm seeing. Those are kind of like the personality traits that I'm seeing on the AI side. So they're small businesses, so there's really not a coordination tax. I mean, I'm working with founders that are also they're the sales team, they're the product team, they're the marketing team, they're the customer success team. So there's no coordination tax when we're starting to set up like a centralized context repository for them, or they want to replace a skill or replace a SaaS product that they're using. They get to make the decision and build the solution and implement themselves. And there's very few people that they have to get on board to make those changes in the organization. And then where all of these things live, it happens instantly. So they're actually building their business all day, every day. And now with the small business leaders that are engaging with AI and really embracing it, there's just such a competitive advantage that they're having by running a small business that way. Otherwise, I mean, I think something that we do see a lot at oAT in general of small businesses that come to us is they just generally feel underwater. They just need help. Like they come to us because they're like, I'm trying to do too much and I need help, and I'm an octopus and I need somebody else who's an octopus that's going to help do this with me. The way that AI empowers them to just be like a little bit of a faster octopus. They're never not going to be the octopus, but they still get to get help with AI being a little bit faster and easier. But where I'm seeing it show up is a lot of the marketing collateral. I know one of our current projects, she's like, I don't know, AI built it when I'm asking about this brochure or that brochure. And she's like, I don't know, it's great, isn't it? It's so great. I like Claude's great, and she feels almost like Claude is like her teammate. And she trusts Claude very much on the marketing collateral. And then when it gets into writing email, she's like, oh no, Claude's not allowed to touch that. I'm not doing that. But that core documentation, I think that Joshua was also speaking about for startups of like, what is our messaging? Who does it go to? Is it consistent? That's also happening on the small business side is one solid place for that. So one interesting thing that I'm also seeing is that though a lot of these applications or a lot of these businesses have small engineering teams, they are leveraging AI to help them think through the problems and make their engineering teams move faster, even though they have AI. So like there's still users where engineers do exist on their teams. There's discernment that they are adopting AI slowly, even if some of their teammates were a little bit hesitant at first. I think it's just becoming really helpful. And there's a connection that can now happen between product and engineering, or if like the founder is technically product, like the small business owner is the product side, then the engineering side, there's almost like a translator between engineers and owners because product people or the engineer people, I'm sorry, product or the owner can go to Claude and say, this is what my engineer is telling me. What are they actually saying? And then they can use AI to talk back to the engineer in the engineering language, which is really helpful. And that's so it's also interesting now that as a small business, because they can operate so independently and with a lot of sovereignty, what's being built is way closer to the vision than it would have been if they had to translate it in the past, because they're actually the one who's building it is the one that's imagining it, which is a unique advantage again for these small businesses. And same as I think we're seeing this across the board, but what's interesting specifically for small businesses is that in a small business, you only really need 1 or 2 seats for the SaaS products that you're using. So the impact of making the change is way different than it would be at an enterprise scale or like even a small medium business. Of if you're going to replace your Asana or you're going to replace your ClickUp or you're going to replace your CRM like HubSpot. Shout out to all of the small businesses. I really want to pin on thinking that I don't know what it is about the HubSpot kind of hype of like everyone thinks that they should be using HubSpot. Like that's going to make them. It's so many young businesses and startups get into that somehow. They somehow like drink the Kool-Aid of the HubSpot, and it's an incredibly expensive platform, regardless of whether AI exists or not. So anyways, I'm just like praising and extending compassion to every business that's gotten caught up in that HubSpot hype. But either way, let's say the small business wants to get off of HubSpot. There's just really like the cost differences and the tax that it is for them to get everyone off and migrate all the data is so much smaller. And if they are going to replace it, they don't have to build it necessarily to hold 20 seats. They don't need like in a lot of SaaS platforms, what's most advantageous is change. You can see who changed what in the system and when. You can comment back and forth. You need to be able to work with other users in the system. But when there's a small business, they might not prioritize that because they don't need to. So it's actually cheaper to build and it's simpler to build. It's like, I just need to manage this as opposed to I need a team that can collaborate in a system and manage things at the same time. I'm just absorbing this last slide.
Yeah, your last one.
So yeah. So there's something about in small businesses because there is that responsibility, the ability to respond, but also taking responsibility as a small business owner, everything is yours. There's something about small businesses that if they learn AI, then the organization knows AI. Whereas in startups or enterprise, sometimes they're like, I'm the leader, I don't need to know AI, but my team better know it. And then there's this kind of like, my team should be learning AI and we need to be using AI. And there's kind of this like top down, we should do it. But for small businesses, if anybody's gonna learn it, it has to be the owner. And so there's a little bit more responsibility or like, or what's the word? Like the owner of the small business is actually taking the initiative to learn AI and more than I'm seeing in other organizations. And that's making a huge impact on their teams and the business itself. And because the learning curve or the interest, the engagement, the adaptability of the small business owner means that the sky's the extent to which the business can leverage AI is based on how much the business owner is willing to engage with AI. So in one case, I have one small business that is right in GitHub in there, building out repositories, making pull requests, like really adopting GitHub as a context repository. And then there's another small business I'm working with that we're building out a very simple repository using Google Drive so that we don't have to teach GitHub at all, because that's just too much of an emotional tax to learn a new system, learn what a pull request is, all of that, those things. And so it really depends on like who the leader is in the business of how AI gets adopted in the small business. And we know, as we all know, like it starts at the top, but in a small business, the distance between the top and the bottom is much smaller.
Amazing. Awesome. On to some questions. Questions for the room. I'm really excited about this part. I think it'll be lovely to see everybody's just shared perspectives. So as you're adopting this technology and supporting teams to do that, like what are the main challenges that are emerging? Like, and then complementary to that, where is the value? So what's making it hard and where is really the impact? And how do you see those things happening specifically based on the size and type of companies that you shared about before?
Are these questions for us or for the people who are?
Oh, for you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Kelsey, do you
I
Good
have
to
can
know.
any?
I would also be curious, like if people have, yeah, I'd be curious if people have their own answers to this to put them in the chat because we can definitely speak to those here.
I would say, and Stephen already spoke to this one, but time. I feel like as I'm training people and working with organizations, just continuing to acknowledge of, hey, I recognize this is a job on top of your job, that you actually have a job to do today, and I'm asking for another hour of your time away from the job that you need to be doing to learn how to build a skill or to onboard to a repository. And there's only so much time in a day. So in this adoption of AI, I'm learning that that is kind of a bottleneck and that that's a challenge that's emerging of people having enough time. And then I think Stephen has been a great leader for us of learning how to go through that bottleneck, which is kind of rinse and repeat week over week and staying with it consistently in bite size trainings, as opposed to you're going to learn this in a 2-hour workshop and then you're off to the races. And that's not actually how it works. But that's something that I'm coming up against with the teams that I'm working with.
We're budgeting for this at the enterprise where it's like basically anyone who's going through a kind of focused or an intentional learning cohort gets like substantial time carved out in their week and permission from like C-suite leaders who are saying to them like it is okay for you to decline meetings, like you should put essentially like out of offices on so that you're not, even if it's an important meeting, like unless it's like an emergency, you should not be going to those meetings so you're actually able to allocate time towards this. Yeah, just would 100% echo that, Kelsey, because we're seeing that. And it's hard for people, but I think having that leadership permission makes a lot of difference. I would just say in terms of like challenges that I just feel personally around this is that AI, and when I talk about AI, I'm not talking about like your chatbot experience. Like if you're just talking about like ChatGPT or like going back and forth between like you and essentially like a conversational partner. I'm talking about whenever you actually start to build agentic workflows, or like if you try to start to automate parts of your processes and the parts of your own projects and work. What you will find, and what I find, is that the AI moves so quickly and documents so much. It just creates like a large surface area that you feel like you have to review everything, and you feel like have to try to like keep up with everything. And the reality is you can't. And I'm starting to like just give myself permission around this. Is that like I will never be able to keep pace with an agent, and so I need to try to find ways and those specific areas, those specific spots where like I do need to review. And whenever I'm building any kind of skill, and I think that one of the things we try to model and we try to talk about a lot is like being focused on building skills. And you know, when I say skills, like these are the essentially like the job descriptions for the agents that you're working with. Like if you think about like Claude Code, or if you think about like Codex, for example, these are like general purpose agents that have big brains, that are very smart, very capable, but they might not have the specific domain expertise that you want them to have. And so that's what we talk about, building skills to hand essentially to your agent. But as you're doing this, like trying to think about how do you keep pace? How do you make sure that you're involved at the right point of those processes, those workflows, those automations? And then how do you actually learn along the way? And so this kind of gets back to like Joshua's point about earlier about staying connected in this way. Like one of the things that I'm trying to do more and more is like at the end of a day, going back over the course of like all of my different sessions and asking the agent to put together essentially like a little quiz for me, just to like test my knowledge, to test my understanding. That little manual process, it sort of forces you to think. It forces you to review the areas that you need to review. Actually, there's an engineer from Notion who just posted a big piece about this last week, talking about how, creating like learning artifacts for yourself along the way. The other thing that I would just say to this is that like it's not enough just to like have the agent do the work. Like Andre Carpathy will say, like you can export your thinking, but you cannot export your understanding. And like this is even just like us all being together in this call is a really great forcing function to be like, hey, this is the stuff that we do day in and day out. But like talking about it and trying to explain it in a way that's understandable, hopefully understandable for everyone who's on the call, is like its own kind of challenge and its own kind of like learning device. So you'll find the ways that work for you, but it's absolutely a challenge.
All right. Um, I'd love to surface to your point one of the questions that came up, because as we get towards the last 10 minutes of this, please do ask questions in the Q&A. I'll surface them for our team to be able to answer. And then if we do have space, I have some questions more. But one question that was asked was, a challenge I've noticed is that everyone uses AI differently or for different needs. So how does one optimize their learning?
Yeah, I mean, I can just say like if you're trying to optimize your learning for yourself, that's one thing. I think if you're trying to like optimize your learning or like learning for more than one person, I would just say like build from the ground up and like have a vision for how you want to build as a team or as an organization. I mean, to Kelsey's comment earlier, like are you going to sort of like teach people the fundamentals of GitHub, for example? Like the use of AI might vary by person, but I think there are best practices that we want to align on. And like just one really like low hanging fruit of an example is like learning how to author great skills. And people might have different approaches to how they're going to like think about skills or rolling skills out within their organization, but there absolutely is a best practice for how to write them and how to write, how to author, how to use them. And so I think like trying to understand like where are those best practices and like creating the learning material, the learning processes around that.
Where have you seen those best practices outside of what you've learned by doing?
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of like where I found resources.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, well, there was a great conference that just happened last week. I think it was the last AI engineer. It hosted in San Francisco. I think like that's a really top class sort of resource. I tell people that if you want to stay sort of keep your finger on the pulse of where AI is, like I'm not a huge like Twitter X user, but like go to X because like you're going to find the most up-to-date information there. Hacker News is a great place to go. There's some great YouTube resources as well. One thing that I'll just say, because it came up last week, like someone was asking me like, oh, what course should I sign up for? thinking that they're going to go to Coursera and like take a course on how to use I can guarantee you that that course is it's already outdated. It's already 4 months too old. And so like, you're probably not going to find like paid courses in the traditional places to learn about this stuff. So you're going to have to kind of like work with your agent to develop learning resources for yourself, learn how to like develop great quizzes, great engagement material. Go to YouTube, go to X, go to Hacker News. There's actually a great skill for this by a guy named Matt Van Horn. It's called The Last 30 Days. It's one that I've been loving right now, but you can actually just sort of put in any topic into your agent sort of chat window. And if you've got this skill installed, it will actually in-depth survey all of from Hacker News, from X, from YouTube, from Reddit, and then there's one fifth source that I can never remember. But basically, it does like an in-depth review of all of those different sources, and will bring you up to speed on the most recent activity, the most recent information. Again, over the last 30 days. So there's a lot of great learning techniques out there, and they don't look like a traditional course. And definitely don't go to graduate school for learning AI. Waste of money and time.
Well, and I also think that, I mean, there is, at least we've seen across startups or small businesses, and just like you started this whole conversation on enterprise, like a lot of fear and a lot of emotion that I'm behind. And I think you've always been really thoughtful in sharing with the teams we serve and our internal generalists that everybody's always behind, because it's constantly learning, everybody's constantly learning and growing through this together. And that's okay. That's the work. It's okay that it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
Kelsey.
On the buy versus build question, because I just want to make sure that this anonymous attendee gets this question answered. I have some hot takes on like when to buy versus build, but most of them just kind of center around like not over engineering like your own. Like it's so fun to like build a product or like build some really cool feature, but then what we've learned over time is that what you build you have to maintain. There is no set it and forget it, and so the more complicated your code becomes for whatever product you're building, just realize that when it breaks. And I know that like Britt and I have definitely had this experience over the past couple of months because we built this like really kind of really awesome, fun sort of like automated proposal tool. But like in the early days, as I was like building this out, Britt would reach out and be like, "Hey, this one thing doesn't work." I'm like, "Oh, it doesn't work," and I've got to go find it. Work with the agent in the code base to like find where it's not working and like fix it. So whatever you build, you have to fix, and that is just a truism, I think, for software development that will always be true, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I'm over here giggling because that didn't go away. That's just my job now instead of Steven's. So that's fine. And but the thing is, this is where the like creativity comes in, is like I will take that job all day. I absolutely love that job as a part of what we're building at oAT, because we do need a proprietary system for how we run our business. There isn't a SaaS platform that solves that problem. However, I have like there's a tangible example here of the build versus buy, which is we started on Airtable to run our business because it was the only tool that existed that could really do a relational database at the scale that we needed. Now we've migrated that over to a true platform. However, part of our sales function still is needing email pipeline management, automated emails, tracking deals. I made the decision internally of like, we're not going to replace a CRM right now. We don't have the bandwidth internally to rebuild a Gmail agent that can, pop into your inbox, read all your emails, have privacy settings of like, somebody can see this email, but somebody can't, and all of that. Like some SaaS products are actually really good at that. And I love leaning on the people that have built a really good product. They have a great API or webhook call, or maybe even an MCP, and like let them be really good at what they do. So like we love granola and we love Pipedrive. I have no agenda right now, so far as I know. Maybe I don't know about it, but we're not trying to build anything to replace those. We actually really love those, and they work really well with our system because they have API exposure. Whereas this one part of like what we had to build in Airtable that did need its own platform, and this proposal builder that Steven built can now connect to that. So I am kind of an advocate of like, there are sometimes it actually is better to buy, but know what your seats cost and know what the implication is. And API exposure is a huge part of whether or not you should be building versus buying.
And then
Just to add to that as well, like there's an interesting place to start is when you're using software and it comes up short in certain areas, and being able to actually build something on top of that with the APIs that it provides. So, for example, we've recently built something for using HeyReach or Meet Alpha, which are LinkedIn outreach tools. We couldn't remake that software because it requires us to be like have a business partnership with LinkedIn. So it's a whole thing to do that. But it was lacking in certain features that were really relevant for our particular use case, and we were able to build out a complete kind of app that allowed us to track connections over time, and then classify replies, etc., so that we can feed that back into our sales system. So that's a really interesting place to start when it comes to building software to use internally.
I think I think AI is, we are told that AI will make everything easier and everything faster and everything more productive and everything better. And when we are choosing which tool to use, there is a downstream effect to understand whether that's going to be more or less work. If you start to play around with AI and you don't know it, you haven't learned it, it will probably be more work for you to learn. Like there, if you build out a whole agent system and that feels really great for you because you're a startup founder and you know these tools really well, you still have to manage that system. There's more work there. So I think in the inflection point of build versus buy, what is the impact? Are you trying to reduce the work, create better communication flows, operate more effectively? Will buying or building achieve that, knowing that there's going to be work that's attached to that, which I think that's really interesting. We're almost at time. 30 seconds. Joshua, Stephen, Kelsey, each of you to just share a final insight about your experiences and as an operator doing this work. Stephen, do you want to start?
Use it, just use it. Like use it for everything. I know that sounds kind of like crazy, but like I really try to do almost everything with AI, like AI first. It doesn't always work, but I think like you'll learn what the boundaries are and what the edges are, and that's really valuable.
I'll take a note out of Stephen's book, which is pairing some sort of dictation tool, whether it's whisper flow or a monologue, with using AI and using AI to help you unblock AI. So like AI, they'll send me a message and I will copy and paste that message and be like, what does this mean? How do you sent me this message. Here's a screenshot of this error message. Help me. So AI helps me unblock myself when I am digging, and I continue to trust myself, like trust yourself, but also use AI to unblock yourself. And that's how I've gotten as far as I have in my learning process, is like, you are supposed to help me. So help me learn you. And again, like Stephen was saying, like set up your own quizzes and things like that. My way of doing that is asking AI to help me learn it.
Joshua?
And I'll just add that you should, like Stephen said, just use it for everything that you can, try everything. But remember that there are some things that you won't ultimately be able to outsource the AI to make your business a success. So just be mindful of what those things are and use AI so that you can spend more time on those things.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this and you want to learn more and dig in with us over the next couple weeks, our next session is July 29th. It's unlearning like people and customer success, and it's going to be with myself and Sarah Matthew, who's also on this call. High five. And the unlearning sessions are really, again, designed for us to talk about the ways that we did this work functionally before AI and what's changing, and how we can really like specifically and functionally use these tools to improve how we're doing the work that we're excited to do. A huge thank you again to Joshua and Stephen and Kelsey, not only for showing up today, but doing this remarkable work that you do every single day as part of oAT. Please reach out to us if you have more questions, if you're interested in working with us, or just want a thought partner in this new world of work. We are here, sending you all off into a wonderful rest of your Thursday, and have a good one. Thanks, everyone.